If you need to learn how to use stick baits or are unsure how to work tailor lures, then this is certainly going to be the video for you. We're going to highlight our 4 top tailor lures and exactly how to work them for ultimate success. Let's go. G'day guys, Brendan here from On Point Adventures. Now, as you've just gathered from that intro there, we are teaching you today how to use tailors to maximum effect. Now, we're going to show you our 4 favourite lures that we like using that generally turn fish if they're about. And there's the first tip to tailor fishing. They've got to be about in the first place. But first, before we get to the lures, let me just show you the combo that I've found the easiest to work these sort of lures with. What we're using here, this is a Penn Authority 4500, but any 4000 size reel is going to do the trick. We've loaded this one with Berkeley whiplash. Anywhere from 20 to 30 pound is great, or PE2 to PE3. The reason we run a bit heavier is we fish very heavy structure, so the heavier line is advantageous. Now, of course, you can get away with fishing, I guess, PE 1.5 or something like that. However, in these areas, it's a bit gnarly. We then go to our rod here. Okay, now this is the Regiment Black Ops 762. 7'6" is a beautiful size rod that I find easy enough to cast all day with. It's not so short that it's pulling your cast back, but it's also not so long that it becomes cumbersome. Because when working stick baits, sometimes the longer rods can become a little bit of a problem. But anyway, enough talking about the combo. Let's get down to the lures. Now, all lures today are going to be run on 40 pound Vanish leader and are just down to a quick release clip there. But before, let's get to my absolute favorite lure. And this is lure number 1. Let me release this bail arm so I can talk to you a bit more about this lure. Of course, it's tied on because it's what I start with usually. This is the Berkeley Slurp 120, and this is by far probably my favorite tailor lure. The best thing about the Slurp 120 is that it's a floating stick bait, so you can use it over shallow reef. Now that can be awesome, especially when you're chasing those tailor that are in those tiny little reef holes that, let's say, are only 5 meters wide and 5 meters across, and you have to drag your lure over that shallow reef just to get into that hole and make it look like the bait fish is entering. So that's where this lure is great, because it floats and it does a great job with that. The other good thing about this lure is it's so easy to work. There's 3 ways we can use it, which you're about to see, one of which is the big sweep. Now, the big sweep is going to get that lure darting that way and darting that way to maximum effect. Now, I'm talking this thing will zig and zag ½ a meter each side once you get it going well. The second way we like to work it is short, sharp rod tip jabs, which, as I said, you're going to see this in a minute. And this lure will just do tiny little zigzags. And then, of course, the last one is just a straight retrieve. But anyway, let's get to the footage of working the Slurp 120. Okay, so here we have the Slurp 120 by Berkeley. This is a fantastic lure, as mentioned before. We can work this over super shallow stuff and deep stuff, but how we're going to work it is like this. Big long cast, and then we're going to be sweeping the rod tip constantly the whole way in. I'll show you. So they cast out. They're not the longest casting lure, but because this is a floating lure, we don't need to be too rushed. And all I'm doing here is just little rod tip sweeps, and you can just see that lure there, that slurp, just ripping across the surface there. It's zigging and zagging from side to side and is absolutely unbeatable if the tailor is sometimes shut down. Now, I'm going to show you one more different retrieve on this lure. We'll bring it in. There's a bit of weed around today. Clear. Always make sure you clear your lures, guys. Okay. So, we're just going to cast that lure again. Get it back in that zone. There it is. So this time we're just going to be doing lots of little tiny rod tip twitches like this, okay? And that's just coming through that wash zone there, creating that tiny little bit of interference in the water. And if there's a tailor there, hopefully it sees it, picks it up, and we're in business. But there you go, guys. That's a Slurp 120. You can, if you really want to, if you're feeling a bit lazy, I'll just quickly show you. You can just cast it straight out and wind it in, and it'll do its own thing. We have caught Tailor doing this, don't get me wrong, but this is nowhere near as effective as if you're just giving those tiny little rod tip twitches, and it just looks like a tiny little potty mullet coming in. And my one tip is that pink face there, absolutely unbelievable. Second of all is another probing lure for me, and that is the CID GT Ice Cream in pink. Sorry, I got a really cold chill there and it sent it up me. Whoa. But anyway, this lure is fantastic for super long casts. This one here for such a short lure is 2 ounces, or in the old scale, just over 50 grams. I like using this lure when I've got to reach super far places. When the Tailor out of casting distance of every other lure, you can use this. The disadvantage of this lure is it does sink quick, so if you've got to cast on shallow reef, you've really got to be onto it, which I'm going to show you in the retrieve in a minute. But ideally, this lure is super long casting, turns fish, and works really well. Check it out. Okay, so the GT Ice Cream. What we're going to be doing with this is a great lure to cover a lot of bases, but most importantly, find the fish. How we're going to work this is we're going to cast this out as far as we possibly can, and just before it hits the water, we're going to stop the bail arm and start winding immediately, because this lure will sink quick, just like this. So big cast, as you can see, still going, just about to hit the water there, bail arm's over, and we're winding it in. We're keeping the rod tip high the whole time. All right, and as you might be able to see through the camera there, we've got it splashing along the surface perfect. What that does is that there creates all the interest you're going to need for a Tailor to come out and absolutely ambush this. It's a fantastic lure to turn the fish on. So once again, big cast, traveling, there's the water, wind immediate, rod tip high to get that lure working, and then you can drop your rod tip in nice calm conditions like this. And as I said, this will just keep skipping across that surface, skipping, and hopefully a Tailor will come and nail that. Okay, so you've now rocked up. The GT Ice Cream's not working, the Slurp's getting interest, but you can see they're smaller fish, so the 120 profile is potentially a bit too big. What do? Throw a small little sinking stick bait. This one here is a little tiny sprat. Now this is a very heavy stick bait, so it casts a super long way, but it does sink like an absolute rock. As you can see on this one here, I hope you can, especially over that side there and on the belly, this has had a lot of hits. This fish has caught its fair share of Tailor, and to be honest, probably should be bloody retired. But anyway, it keeps catching. This can be used in a multiple of ways with probably 2 main retrieve types, which you're about to see. But all in all, if the small fish are about, and let's say the herring are troubling you or so forth, this lure will get them. Check out how you retrieve it now. Okay, so how to work the small sinking stick bait like a little tiny CID sprat. Now these are a pretty solid construction, as I've mentioned. They cast like a bullet, out it goes. I like stopping that just before it hits the water. And then for this one, I'm pretty much just got a crank happening. That's all I'm doing, a pretty fast crank. So these lures here work very similar to a metal in my eyes. They skip, they dart, they zig, they zag, they do all the good stuff they need to do to entice a bite. Now, that was a very fast retrieve. You can wind these a bit slower. Out it goes again. Okay, you can wind it a bit slower, and what that'll do, it'll give it a bit more of a wobble. Okay, and then that's what's going to attract the fish on the slower retrieve. So if the fish are being a bit more lethargic, then it's sometimes not a bad idea to slow it down just slightly. But look, you can't slow this lure down too much because it sinks like a bloody rock. And when there's a lot of weed around, these lures aren't much chop. This one's going to surprise you a bit. and probably cause the most amount of questions, because this is the lure I tend to throw the least, although it seems to be the most effective for most. And that is a larger profile stick bait like this one here, which is a STICKBAITS Monsoon Breaker. The Monsoon Breaker is once again a solid stick bait, so unlike its brother the Slide Swim Minnow or the SSM, which has a sliding cast weight system, this does not. This is just a solid lure. Now I do like using this lure from time to time because in my eyes the very thin profile looks like a guardie, a very small guardie. And tailor love guardies, we know this. This lure can be used in a huge array of places. Even being a sinking stick bait, you can work it over some of the shallow reef because of the way they've designed the chin. It can get up and skip across the surface. On the drop, it flutters. On the retrieve, we'll show you all three, but you can absolutely have no idea about stick baits and make this one work perfectly with the simplest of retrieves. But anyway, enough yabbering about the STICKBAITS Monsoon Breaker. Check out how it works. Okay, and then the largest style stick bait, so this is up around 100 to, let's say 150 mil stick baits, which work really well on tailor. All we're going to do with these sinking stick baits is very, very similar to the Berkeley stick bait, funny enough. We're going to let this one hit the water though. As it's a sinking stick bait, it's going to work subsurface, and we're just going to give it little rips like this, okay? Little rips is all it needs. Now we're fishing fairly shallow water. If it's deeper, you can let it sink a bit more. So yeah, I just like getting little rips into it, and what that's doing is it's just making that lure dart from side to side. So this is a good way to work a stick bait. The other way you can work these stick baits here, so these here being a longer profile, on the retrieve don't sink so fast, so we can just literally launch that out there, cast like a mile, and then we could just get it moving, but then we're just on a really slow roll. Now the way some of these Japanese stick baits are designed is that you pretty much can be clueless as to the idea of working a stick bait and slow roll them, and they're still swimming like absolute beauties. And they pick up so many tailor and so many other fish on the slow roll, tuna, any sort of pelagic sort of fish. And then when it gets close, as you can see, she's skipping across the top there. And that's, as I said, largely due to the profile of this lure. But once again, if there's heaps of weed like there is today, then these lures aren't the best because they do catch a lot. And I'm pretty sure I heard a wind knot run through the guides then, which isn't great. There it is there. What a bastard. And there you have it, guys. My 4 favorite types of stick baits, or tailor lures, I suppose, and exactly how to work them. Now, as I said, guys, you don't need to buy the more expensive stuff. In fact, Penn has actually just released the new Pursuit reels, which are so cost effective. You can pretty much set a whole tailor combo up for about $250 that is going to last you for the test of time. It's going to do a great job and really, really put those fish on the deck. But anyway, guys, that's how I like to work tailor lures for maximum effect. I hope this has been helpful, and I really hope this helps you get into some tailor. Now, if you've got a way you like working your stick baits, or potentially there's a stick bait that you like most, why not comment below and let me know exactly what that is. All right, guys, have a fantastic afternoon, morning, whatever time you're watching this, I don't know, and we'll see you on the next one. Catch you later.